what's up? It's your host, Tori, and who is ready to be petty? Happy 2021, everybody. I hope you had a fab New Year's. I spent it Zooming with my family and then on TikTok for the rest of the night. So it was definitely not one for the books. And then basically since then, it has just been pure Sunday scaries. But I did have the pleasure of talking with Ida from TikTok and Toronto about Princess Diana, her tragic passing, and some of the theories and conspiracies around her death. We also talk a little bit about her marriage to Prince Charles and their divorce and what she did after it. And then we chat about Prince Will and Kate, Prince Harry and Meghan, Will's hairline. It was a really good conversation despite all of the really dark topics. So I hope that you enjoy it. If you're new around here, make sure you go and follow at RTBP Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And come join our listener Facebook group. We talk all about pop culture, reality TV, celeb gossip, the usual. And you can do me a big favor by heading over to Apple Podcasts, if you're not already there, and leaving RTBP a 5-star rating and review. Okay, let's get to the episode. I'm back with a very special guest. Ida from TikTok is here. Ida, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for coming on. I found Ida from TikTok, another TikToker. I feel like I am really expanding the pod to include this new platform. New for me, I guess, because as we were talking about before this episode, I am a boomer compared to Ida. But I found Ida's TikToks covering Princess Di and the royal family, and I knew I had to have her on the podcast. Ida, can you tell the listeners of the podcast a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So honestly, I'm just a 21-year-old business student in Toronto. I was bored during quarantine, downloaded TikTok, started off with whipped coffee, and I've always loved The Crown. And I just made a TikTok about Princess Diana and just a little bit about her, and it got a lot of attention. And I just started making more content about the royal family and Princess Diana. And I guess that's kind of what I do on TikTok now, but I'm just finishing up my 4th year of my undergrad.
Nice. What do you plan on doing once you're done school?
That's a good question. I was having a conversation with my dad about this yesterday. So I applied for law school for next year. So let's see how that goes. But I definitely see myself in the business or legal field, hopefully both with corporate law, but hopefully there'll be good news about that soon.
That's amazing. Well, when you are a lawyer, you need to do a lot of research. And I feel like you are primed for that because all of your TikToks are so well researched.
If I'm not behind bars, I get comments sometimes and they're like, the royal family will come for you. Like, don't say this. Have you seen those at all? I get kind of scared sometimes. I'm like, should I be posting this on social media? At least I'll be a lawyer and I can get myself out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But that is something, that I kind of want to talk about is how they have such a tight grip on media and stuff. But we will get into that. We're both Canadian. I'm from the West Coast. You're in Central Canada. What was your experience growing up and learning about the royal family? Because we are part of the Commonwealth, which I forget 90% of the time.
I honestly forget that all the time too. And I think growing up, there was 2 ways I was exposed to the royal family. One was, like you said, we're Canadian, we're part of the Commonwealth. We kind of learn about the constitutional monarchy in school. I think it was always a part of geography class and stuff in elementary school. But I think my biggest memory of learning about the royal family is, when you're in a convenience store or a gas station or a grocery store and there's the Hello magazine, and it's
yes,
why did Kate Middleton wear this? And it's almost I think I've always viewed them more as celebrities than government, which I don't know if that's wrong, but my first memories of the royal family is just celebrity gossip, what they're wearing, what they're eating, who they're talking to. And just waiting in line with my mom and looking at the magazine. And I think that's what spiraled into being so, I guess, obsessed with them when we're older and watching The Crown. So those are like my first memories. But was that just me, or do you remember these magazines as well?
Totally. And I think that that was the same. Like I was a 90s baby, so like I vaguely remember like Princess Di coverage, but like definitely Kate Middleton and Harry and William growing up for sure like covered a lot of tabloid magazines, and my family loved to buy those and read them and like watch Entertainment Tonight and stuff like that. So I think you're totally right. It was the same for me. I did view them more as celebrities than like truly like a form of, yeah, government in Canada.
No, for sure. And there's just something really, I guess, interesting about them because it's like at the end of the day, they're just people, but they live such a different life that I think like videos that you see on YouTube that's like 10 things that you're not allowed to do as a royal, like those just get me going because I'm like, I want to know what you can't do. Like, it's really interesting to learn about their life.
Yeah, that's so true. I've gone down those rabbit holes like just so easily of like what will happen when Queen Elizabeth passes away and stuff like that, like all of the protocols. And it is just fascinating. Do you think that there is a reason we're fascinated with like the British royal family than like other ones? Because there are other monarchies in the world, but they seem to have such a hold on like people's fascination.
See, that's the thing. Like, I was doing research a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, there's so many more monarchies than we're aware of. But when someone says like the Queen or the King, you don't think of Belgium, you think of the UK. And I think obviously being Canadian has an aspect to do with it, just the fact that we are part of the Commonwealth. But I also think that the I don't know. I think the UK or Britain is just such a strong, powerful nation. They have impacted the world in a lot of positive and negative ways. So I feel like everyone has something to say about them in a way where I feel like some of the other countries that are monarchies or constitutional monarchies are more secluded, small, don't have as much, I guess, power on the world. And I think just the timeline of everything that happened, like looking at us growing up, obviously I wasn't born when Princess Diana passed away yet, but Princess Diana passes away, it's a big deal. Everyone's talking about it. Then Charles marries Camilla, everyone's talking about it. William and Harry are two like bachelors, who's going to be the future wives of these very tall, handsome, rich royalties. So I think that there's just always something going on with them, whereas maybe I'm not even looking into it, but I've never heard something about like the son of the King of Monaco. I couldn't even, if he could be in front of me in Longos and I wouldn't know who he is. Like that is literally, that is how it is.
Truly.
I think the biggest thing, there's like just always some aspect of mystery to them. Why did they do this? Why did that happen? And whether it's good or bad, I think it kind of gets people hooked and people want to know.
Yeah, I wonder if in Europe there's more public interest in other monarchies like Spain and stuff, especially with like the younger royals where like it's very easy for them to be like in tabloids, etc. But yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Like the UK is obviously, I don't know if they're considered like a superpower, but they're definitely like in one of the like biggest, most influential countries in the world. I think something that I also think about of being in Canada is like sometimes you just don't notice that like everything actually has to do with the the monarchy. Like even just like the ferries that I take to get to Vancouver Island, like they are either named after Queen Elizabeth or they have a picture of her like hanging at the front, like just those types of things. Like I live near the Parliament buildings in Victoria, and like there's pictures of the Queen. Obviously, there's like the Queen's entrance. When Will and Kate and Harry and Meghan got married, you could go down and write like well wishes to them and they would like mail them to them. So I think it's like also just, it's kind of all around us, even though we don't maybe notice it.
Oh, 100%. This is like a legal fact here, my future lawyer coming in the middle. But I went to law camp in the US. I know I'm such a nerd, but I was I was so confused because when you have a legal case in Canada, something as small as this is it says RV the person, where in the US it's like the people versus someone. And I was so confused. I'm like, how this is something little, but it is I guess a legal case is one of the biggest forms of legislation or government or enforcement in a country, and that is the representation of the crown. So something is something so
Yeah.
little, but it's very symbolic.
That's such a good point. You're right. Like our cases are the crown. That form of government, the judicial system is called the crown that represents the government. And then you're right. The R is like Regina for Queen Elizabeth. And then when it is King Charles, eventually, maybe, question mark.
Yeah, maybe question mark.
It'll
We'll come
be
back to
Rex.
that one.
Yeah. You're totally right. I feel like it's just everywhere, but you don't notice it. Or like even on our money and stuff. Like it's all, most of it is like Queen Elizabeth. So
Yeah.
it is really interesting. And I guess that's a difference that we have from like the States or other countries that aren't part of the Commonwealth. Okay, I think we should get into it. So you are like one of the biggest Princess Diana fans that I've seen on TikTok. And I think that just goes to show that her, not fandom, but I guess so, like her popularity and public interest has really spanned like decades and even like after her death, which I think is really interesting and shows kind of the type of person that she is.
For sure. I think that she was just one of a kind. I think that's like the one way that you can describe it. Like she wasn't just this very beautiful, fashionable, pretty girl. She was so kind. She was so genuine. And I think that people, I guess, hadn't been exposed to that in any form of the royal family before. Shade, but not shade. And people just loved her. And I think because her death was so sad and so sudden, rather than kind of being like, oh, that was so, I guess, heartbreaking, but let's move on. People even talked about her more after she passed away. All these documentaries, all these books, they came out because I guess people didn't want to forget her. And I think that's something that's really beautiful and touching about her life.
It's so interesting to me because it seems like, or from what I've heard, the Modern Family, the royal family, like the TV show.
Good show.
Yes, it is. The royal family always wants to modernize itself. And I feel like Princess Diana showing kindness and compassion and feelings to other people is like one way that they could have done that. Why do you think that there was always so much like tension between the royal family and Diana? Like it doesn't seem like she had any allies.
I think people, like human nature wise, you just feel threatened by change or something that's unconventional. So I think and that doesn't have to be if you're in the royals or anything. Like if you have a certain way of doing things and running the show and someone walks in and they do it so differently and it gets amazing coverage from the public and people love them. I hate to say it, but I don't think it's anything other than jealousy. And even in one of Princess Diana's documentaries, like she talks about how, for example, Prince Charles would joke about the fact that, oh, like everyone comes for her, no one comes for me. But you know how there's that quote that goes behind every I'm just kidding, there's a little bit of truth. I do think that it's like, oh, I'm so jealous of my wife, ha ha ha, but I'm actually jealous and I'm just kind of using humor as a way to write it off. And I think that the main difference was the royals, I do think that like to kind of create a barrier between themselves and the public. And I'm not saying that I think that's right or wrong, but that's kind of been the way that things have always been. So I think Diana coming and, you know, sending her kids to like day school and not being homeschooled, having her kids at a hospital, not a castle, going to her kids like events at school, it wasn't like a tiny step towards this non-traditional parenting style. It was like a massive leap that I don't think anyone expected or wanted. And I think that just created so much tension within the family.
Right. And I guess like this was 30 some years ago, whereas now you're right. I feel like they are making incremental changes to be more with the public. Like we see Will and Kate's kids going to school and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But you're right. This is like still 30 years like later than this thing. I just don't get though, and maybe this is something that I've always been curious about, and maybe it's specific to people in the royal family and specifically like in line for the throne, but wouldn't you just want to be like a power couple like Charles and Diana and like not capitalize on your wife's fame because that sounds gross, but like kind of merge forces instead of like dim her light?
Kind of like a Brangelina before they got a divorce.
Totally, totally.
So I before they got a divorce, that was kind of sad, but I agree. But I think the missing piece of the puzzle to be a power couple is you need one to be in love mutually, and two, I think you need both parties to be very secure in the fact that the other person's shining. And I think like in today's pop culture, I can't think of like an example off the top of my head, but when you see these couples and like they're genuinely happy to see the other person thrive and shine and they take turns, I don't think that was the case for Charles and Diana. Their marriage was just so empty that I think that there wasn't room to have that power couple, I guess, vibe. And even if I think you wanted to fake it for paparazzi, I don't think Charles would put his ego aside. I'm speaking about these people like I know them personally, which I don't.
Love it. I love
but
it.
I just feel like, like what motivates you to be so compassionate and be someone's number one fan, I think is love. And that's why you do that for your best friends. That's why you do that for your boyfriend, because you genuinely just love them. And if that's not there, I don't think that you can have that.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And I think that kind of brings us to like their marriage, because we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit. But why was Charles initially like pushed to marry Diana when he like obviously like had a relationship with Camilla before and like didn't love her, or it seemed like even like her truly? So why did they want to match them together?
So I was actually reading about this the other day. So Charles and Camilla dated, like you said, and then he found out that Andrew, who's Camilla's ex-husband, wanted her, as side note, as he was dating Princess Anne. So it was like he was dating Princess Anne. He wanted to get with Camilla. Charles found out, and he was like, "Okay, I'm dating this girl. I really like her." Kind of to like time to put a ring on it. And the rumor is that basically his mom and his aunts didn't approve because they just thought she's not fit for you. And I think because the reason that they like Diana so much is because Diana fit externally what they wanted in a princess. She's very quiet, timid. She doesn't talk too loud. She's not outspoken. But I think they didn't expect that like she has these small gestures that they're so meaningful, but they're so small. And I think they thought that, in very blunt terms, that Diana could just be like a puppet, a pretty girl that would be a good princess, be the future mother of the potential king. And I think, especially with an age difference, you think that, oh, I would be able to, I don't want to say take advantage of, but I would be able to control a girl almost over a decade younger than me. And I think that Diana came from a really good family. They were wealthy. They had connections with the royals. They knew them. So I think on paper, everything just kind of made sense to go for Diana, when in reality, like we just talked about this, when there's not really a genuine love or interest there, it really means nothing.
It's so fascinating to me because, like, I think that makes a lot of sense. But then when you look at Queen Elizabeth's life, like, I always kind of pretend that she's a feminist, which, like, doesn't sound like she is. But, like, with her reign, she has had to do so many things, like, by herself with, like, it seems like Prince Philip, at least from what I've seen from The Crown, is not helpful.
I was surprised to see that, too.
He seems like a jerk and, like, not a good partner in terms of like their relationship, but then also like ruling together. And it just seems like Queen Elizabeth did so much on her own, like with like connecting with the prime ministers and just all of the things that she's done in her very, very long reign. But it seems like, wouldn't she want like I would envision, if that was me, I would be like, I want my son to have an equal partner who can help him be like a successful ruler or whatever and not, yeah, like a puppet. But maybe that's just me.
I don't know. Like, I think logically that is what makes sense. But I just think, like you said before, like 30 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like 30 years ago, I don't even think regular people wanted, I hate to say it, like an equal partner as of a wife. Like I think right now we're dealing with equality issues and the feminist movement. So 30 years ago, I think and knowing just like Charles through media, for Queen Elizabeth to be like, you're going to marry someone and they're going to have 50% of your responsibilities in the royal family. I just don't think that's how things were, period, let alone in the monarchy. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think we're using like 2020 logic on the
Yes.
1970s.
You're completely right. I was literally just thinking that, which makes me like, no, I don't want to empathize because it's still gross, but like it does put it in a different context because I totally get that we've changed a lot as a society, and maybe we see that more in Will and Kate and Meghan and Harry versus like Charles and Diana.
And what's crazy to me, or like what's interesting, not even crazy, is that in our heads, like the responsibilities are not split. It's kind of like you want a very hardworking prince and just like a nice, like arm candy wife. That's how we're putting it. But I think it's so weird because, like, in their perspective, it's like Diana at the time had the biggest responsibility of all was to have a firstborn son. And that sounds, if you say that in 2020, I think that sounds ridiculous. People will laugh at you, hopefully. But the reality of it
Yeah.
is when it was announced that William is a boy, people were having like parties. People were so ecstatic because that is what like a strong monarchy is. And if you've seen, I think it's the intro to The Crown, maybe the first episode, and it's like all monarchies, all they want to do is survive. And I think that's it. Like do what you have to do to survive. If it means you need to give birth to a son, let's do that. And I think the pressures were there. They were just on the wrong aspects. No one cared if, you're trying to create awareness about people with HIV. Like, are you giving birth to a son or a girl? Are we continuing this monarchy? And that's, I guess, just how it was.
You're right. It was only changed like in the last handful of years that women could even be in line for the throne because
Exactly.
Charlotte is, I think, the first woman that, or girl now, but
She's so cute.
she's so cute. I like her the best. I feel like for some reason, and I'm probably just projecting, I feel like George is like a little bit of a douchebag. Like he looks like, I don't know, just a
How old
spoiled
is he?
brat to
Like
me.
8 or something? He's a baby.
Yes.
Like he's a kid.
Yeah. And I still like, I stand by that.
Oh my.
Like, I don't know. He has great parents, so maybe he's not like that. But I just feel like, again, it's so weird how differently the firstborn, especially at that time, son gets treated differently
A
than
hundred percent.
everybody else.
100%. And
Yeah,
we can talk about this later. It's the prime example of it is the Kate Middleton marriage, how that was treated versus the Meghan Markle marriage and how that was treated.
completely. Yeah, and we'll get into the Fab Four, as they used to be called. I don't think anyone calls them that now,
Yeah,
but
I
we'll
don't
get
think
into that later.
I think we're leaving that in 2020.
Yeah, totally. So obviously, Charles and Diana's relationship was like pretty empty and pretty difficult, as like depicted a little bit on season 4 of The Crown. What did Diana do after she divorced Charles? Because I think we know how their marriage played out, but I don't know much about her life after her divorce.
To be honest, in a lot of like documentaries and books that I've at least seen, they don't really talk about that was when like her depression and bulimia was still spiraling. So the way that I've kind of read about it was that after her divorce, she was just like the best mom that she could be. And I think that's a very maternal instinct. Like I'm not in my marriage anymore. Let me take care of my sons. And I don't think it was for years, a couple years actually, until she got into a couple. serious-ish relationship. So I think she just continued to work on the important initiatives that she cared about. That was something that really spiraled more tension, because I think what you were talking about before about how, there was so much tension when the marriage was together. I think it even escalated after the marriage was torn apart, was that she didn't let the fact that she wasn't, Her Royal Highness stop her from kind of doing whatever she wanted to do. And I think that the jealousy comes to play here when, you're technically not a part of the royal family anymore, but your face is on the cover of every magazine, and people still talk about you more than they talk about your husband. And I think that tension really probably escalated into some internal conflict within all of them.
And it's so weird because I feel like we're having the same thing with, again, bringing up something we'll talk about later, but Prince Harry and Meghan. Like,
100%.
it's like the same thing. They're continuing their like charitable efforts, even though they're not like senior royal members anymore. And again, it seems like the jealousy is just spiraling
Through the roof. Exactly.
it does give me some sense of peace that Princess Di had like maybe some fulfilling relationships post Charles in her life, like before her passing. Like that does give me I don't know, just like a sense of relief.
Yeah. I think, have you heard about, I'm blanking about his name, the Pakistani surgeon that she dated. Do you know about that story?
Not
So
really.
after she did this, kind of breaks my heart a little bit. So after she divorced Charles, she was kind of tied to a lot of men, but it's the tabloid, so I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, you're pictured walking with someone out of a polo match, and you're married and you're carrying their child, and that spirals. But she, to this day, like, the rumor is that she was in a relationship with, it is bothering me that I cannot remember his name, but he was basically a Pakistani surgeon, and they were in a serious relationship. And he broke up with her because the media, I guess, aspect of their relationship, the paparazzi, was too much for him to handle. And a lot of people say that the man that she dated last before her death, which was Dodi Al Fayed, people say that they were in a serious relationship. People say she was carrying his child. People also say he was a rebound. But apparently, that first breakup really was hard for her to handle.
Okay, so it looks like it's Hasnet Khan.
Yes, thank you so much. You're correct.
But okay, we know from her blood records at her death, she was not carrying this man's child.
This guy or Dodi?
Dodi's.
So that's the thing. You can't even tell, because they, you can't tell if someone's pregnant by like a day until you do blood tests. Because the rumor is that that day she found out she was pregnant. Also, some of this could be glamorized stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I find it hard to believe that like the day she finds out is the day she gets in a car accident that has probably been planned for months. But um Mohammed Al Fayed, which is Dodi's dad, says that that day he got a call, and like he's publicly said that. So maybe it is true. I don't want to call him a liar, but if if you found out you're pregnant, the only thing they can really tell is a pregnancy test. So I don't think you can tell through any type of autopsy, especially an autopsy done after your body's been embalmed. I think it's just one of those things we'll never know.
Whatever happened with Dodi?
In terms of his
Like
autopsy,
light. Oh, he also passed away. He was
he
in
also
the
passed
car.
away. He was in the car, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that okay if we start chatting about the car crash? Because you're saying that it's planned months ahead, and it does seem a little suspicious that her and her boyfriend were in the car. What do you think really happened with that?
Shameless plug. I have like a 6 episode thing on my TikTok you
Yes,
can
you
check
do.
out.
And I've
But
watched the entire thing. Yes.
but like, this is something that people get heated about, by the way. Like, so I think there's two things that can happen. I think you can think that genuinely it was a drunk driver going through a dark tunnel too fast, the car didn't work, and they died. And a lot of people say, like, you guys are too obsessed with Princess Diana that you refuse to believe that she could have a normal passing. I don't think that's the case. Like, something like as to create an example, like rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. He died in a helicopter accident, and no one, everyone's taking that, I think, for face value. No one's thinking it was, planned or manipulated. But I think if too many things happen wrong in a perfect sequence, I personally refuse to believe that it was all an accident. So the fact that there's all this tension leading up from their marriage, now they're divorced. Diana's rumored to be dating these Muslim men that I talked about this in my episode too, but honestly, I don't think that Queen Elizabeth would be okay with William and Harry having Muslim or Pakistani or Egyptian half brothers. And that's not me trying to say that they're racist or they hate Egypt or they hate Pakistan. I think that's just trying to say that the royal family likes to keep their blood British, and most royals do too. I think most monarchs want to keep it to the nation that they are representing, and that's okay. But that's motive right there, in my opinion. I think the fact that she had, information on Prince Andrew and his relationship with Donald Trump is probably motive there. So I think she just had she knew a lot of people. She probably had a lot of information on them. She probably had a lot of haters in the royal family. And I think a lot of people would be okay with her leaving. There's also rumors that at the time you couldn't marry someone unless your ex-wife passed away. People were commenting that on my TikTok. I looked into it and I didn't find anything alluding to that. But if that's the case, that's like our final answer right there. I would say is if Prince Charles can't marry Camilla because Diana's alive, who's going to take the bullet?
That is so dark. It's actually really dark talking about this. Like I didn't think
100%.
that it would be so like morbid. It does seem like there is a lot of motive for someone in the royal family to plan this, but what I always grapple with is like, how has nothing like ever come out with confirmation? Because obviously this would have had to been like a multi-person operation, etc. And I don't know, I'm just curious about like, is there like an employee at the palace that knows like how what did like the police investigation say? Does the royal family control this police investigation and not allow them to do like a proper objective investigation? Because so many people have looked into it, but we have never heard any semblance of like, at least that I know of like an actual accusation.
For sure. And I think there's honestly like a couple reasons I could think off the top of my head that's the reason. So first off, I think like all the evidence lines up with that perfect, simple story that it was a drunk driver. They found, they did find alcohol in his bloodstream. They did find carbon monoxide in the driver's bloodstream. But for example, when I was looking at the reports, the carbon monoxide levels that he had, a person would die if they actually had that much carbon monoxide. And in the reports, they said, oh, the carbon monoxide was because when the car crashed, the airbags, I guess, have carbon monoxide and exposes the person to that. And then right after Mercedes-Benz, which was the model of the car, is like our airbags don't produce any type of carbon monoxide if they're in the form of an accident. And I think because they were just able to have this evidence that, oh, it was literally an accident. The car was malfunctioning. We did a test of the car. The story lines up so, I guess, nicely that no one would want to take on the pressures of objecting the royal family, I think. I think it takes guts to say, like, I think you did it. If you are in a position of power in the sense of like, you're a police officer, you work in the palace, like that is either your job you're giving up, that is either your family might get threatened. I don't know what goes on behind those doors, but like being completely candid, like the reason that I'm able to say this with like an open chest and I'm like, I think the royal family killed Princess Diana, part 7, is because I live in Canada and I know that I'm far, far away from anyone who's going to come after me. But I think if I was maybe in an internal position, I would be too scared to do anything.
That's so true. And again, I think like it's so different maybe in 2021, whereas like back then in the 90s, people, yeah, would just have, I don't know, maybe a harder time to say something or feel, yeah, less safe doing stuff.
For sure.
What are the other like main conspiracies? Like, is there any other conspiracies outside of like the royal family? I guess my question is like, is it Charles going to friggin' the Queen Elizabeth and saying like, I think we should kill Diana? Like, who comes up with this proposition? Does the Queen act alone? Do other people know? What do you think?
I would love to know. I don't think what I've learned, I think, about like corruption is that it's not a plan. Like they don't have a shared Google Doc and it's like Diana Murder 101. Like it's like I think it's just a very like under the table, this needs to be done. I don't know if Queen Elizabeth or Prince Charles was directly involved in it, but I do think that it was definitely an insider job in the sense that like a lot of people realize they have motive for different reasons and they're like, we all want the same thing. So I genuinely don't know how that conversation or that even spiraled. And I want to make this like very clear. Like these are all conspiracies. So I'm not, you know what I mean? This is just like a belief. Like it could genuinely just be a car accident or whatever it was. But Princess Diana is such a high profile celebrity. She doesn't get into any car with just anyone. So how is it that like that one car that was checked out a couple weeks ago and returned is the same one that's, you know what I mean? Like it's suspicious. And I don't think anyone else would really do that given that everyone loved her. Like I think if she was someone that had public haters or a celebrity that people despised, you could say like, oh, it could have been literally just some random person, but everyone in the public loved her. When she died, there was like grown men crying on the side of the castle. So I really don't like, I think her only haters were the royal family.
Do any of the senior members of the royal family like talk about Diana ever in interviews or publicly?
I've only heard William and Harry talk about her, and I think that makes sense. Like, that's their mother. I don't even know what they would say though. Even if you've watched interviews of William and Harry, like you can tell that they're very obviously they're kids and they lost their mom. Like that's the story. But I think you can tell that it just hurts a lot for them to speak about her. And then I have not heard her name come out of anyone else's mouth. Granted, I probably there might be a video somewhere, but I think she's just almost like, you know how I was saying like the public doesn't want to erase her. I think the royal family does 100%. So it's like black and white in that sense.
Yeah, like I follow the royal family Instagram account, which like I kind of want to unfollow now like, after this conversation. But like, yeah, like on her birthday or on like the anniversary of her passing or anything like that, there was like literally no mention
Nothing.
of her, not a black and white photo or like anything. And they do tons of like deep dives into like every other member.
100%. I think the biggest thing that they did was for her 20th death anniversary. William and Harry did that like kind of big documentary style conversation. And, you know, like, again, that's their mother. So I think you kind of, I don't want to say expect, because I don't think you should have expectations on how people want to mourn, but, you know, that's almost seen. But no, I didn't see anyone else.
Yeah, that's so sad.
It is.
Is there anything else you want to touch on Princess Di or the other members of the royal family before we kind of pivot to Meghan and Harry and Kate and Will?
Yes. One thing you mentioned, and I didn't even answer your question, I don't think, because I was spiraling onto a tangent, was you asked are there other conspiracies? There's one, and this went viral on TikTok. I don't know if you saw this, but do you know what I'm talking about? This girl that lives and works in Nova Scotia said that she worked at this very high profile golf club resort, and she saw someone that she thought looked just like Princess Diana. And this resort is a super secluded resort. Like you can live there. Like there's houses. Like it's literally like where the rich of like the rich go. And she's like, and I went to her and I was like, oh, you look just like Princess Diana. And she smirked and she was like, oh, I get that a lot. And the comments were like, oh my God, like I went to that resort. I saw someone that looked just like Princess Diana. So the two other like really big conspiracy theories, I think like anyone who thinks she passed away either thinks it was an accident or thinks it was an inside job. But there are some people that think that Princess Diana like faked her own death and she's alive. And that has been a thing since, this is not new. Like this isn't because this girl saw her. Like this has been a conspiracy theory since she passed away. So that, I'm not gonna lie, that story time about that gave me a couple goosebumps. I'm like, that's so, I don't know, crazy. I can't tell if people want her to be alive, so they're just seeing someone that looks like her. But that's another TikTok viral Princess Diana conspiracy theory that was out, and it was actually a pretty cool series.
That's wild. I'm going to look it up after this because I haven't heard that. But I feel like she couldn't do that. She just loved her kids so much.
Exactly.
I think that's the one thing that I just don't like. The one like plot hole in this conspiracy theory is I just feel like she loved Will and Harry so much that I feel like she couldn't do that. But
I 100% agree.
It is nice to think that she could be out there.
Exactly. And I think it comes back to that element of like mystery, and that's what people like. So I agree though. I think she loved her kids too much to be in Nova Scotia.
Totally. Yeah. Also, like, no one wants to live there.
Yeah. No shade. But
no shade. Okay. Actually, one other thing before we move on. I think you chatted about this in your TikTok series, but Princess Di wrote a letter that said, like to a confidant or something that said, like, if I ever died, it's probably Prince Charles. Like, that is so messed up. Like, that is so effed. And I think that is also like one of the biggest pieces of evidence that there is.
100%.
That
I don't think your intuition lies. Like, you know what I mean? You can sense, like, even at a lower level, like, you can kind of sense when someone's out to get you or use you or manipulate you. Like, we all feel it. And I think that's a perfect example of it. So that, I know that was really creepy. She wrote it to her best friend, who was also her butler at the time. And he like exposed, I don't know if the right word's exposed, but he talked about the letter in a book he wrote. And that, I think, that says a lot. Let's just put it at that.
Do you know when the letter was written in comparison to her death?
I think it was 10 months before her death. And he exposed it in the book in 2005. I think those are the dates, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
I know.
And yeah, I just feel like we still see her impact today. Obviously, clearly, we're talking about it now. And through her kids, like, I feel like really Harry is kind of living out or like just walking in his mother's footsteps.
For sure. And I think something that is really admirable is like how much he loves his family. Like, you can really tell that he loves Archie and Meghan and puts her first. And I hate to say it, but I think that's something that Prince Charles was unable to do with Diana and his kids. And there's a lot of drama around them and leaving the royal family too, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. But it's nice to see that. And even on the William end, I think it's nice to see that he's preparing to, I guess, one day be king. And that's something that you probably feel pressure about. I don't think that's anything easy. And you can tell that he's trying to step into that role. So even though the brothers have definitely diverged into different paths, I think it's something like you can tell they carry their mother's motivation and compassion when they do the things they do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really enjoy both of them. And I think, yeah, you're right. Harry's like relationship with Meghan seems very strong and very much like he's doing what his dad, couldn't do or didn't want to do. So I have a lot of questions. Why do you think that Meghan Markle never had a chance to like really succeed in the royal family? Because I remember when it was first announced that they were dating, I actually thought that she got a lot of good press. I think that their like engagement interview was really well received. And I remember in the Queen's like annual Christmas address, there was like a picture of them on her like piano or whatever. But then it seemed like, and maybe it was even before this, it turned so, all of the press, etc., turned so negatively. Like, what do you think happened? And did she ever have like a chance to really succeed here?
So Meghan and Kate, I think, are very similar and very different. And that is at the same time. And I think that's why Meghan didn't get a chance, is because Kate, I don't know if you remember this, when Kate was engaged to William, a lot of people didn't like her because she's technically not royalty. She comes from a very wealthy, aristocratic family, but she's not royal. And people were so upset about that. But I think Kate really was able to kind of form into the mold of what her expectations were of her. She knew that one day she was preparing to become queen. And I think she was able to kind of soften up her edges and kind of fit in the cookie cutter that they had set for her. I think Meghan never got a chance because, one, not only is she a normal person, she's famous because she's an actress and I love her in Suits, but it's the equivalent of like me being like, okay, I'm gonna marry the Prince of Belgium tomorrow. And she's biracial, which I think makes an impact again because she's not British at the end of the day, even if there's other reasons for that. And I think when she walked in, her and Harry weren't here to impress people. They weren't here to kind of, pardon my French, but like kiss ass or be like, okay, we're here. What do you want us to do? Obviously, they filled their royal duties right after they were engaged. They started going to, their public events and really doing what they had to do. But you could tell that they were like, we're going to do it on our agenda. And I think if you're already kind of weary of someone and they give you that energy, you're going to be like, who do you think you are? Like, this is my show and you're just acting in it. And that on top of the press talking about her dad, talking about exposing messages, I don't think the royal family would be happy with that at all. They're like, you need to act a certain way, you need to look a certain way, and you're going back to the whole Diana thing. You're kind of ruining the status quo that we've set in our traditions for so many years.
Totally. Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. Like, you're definitely right about like Meghan being American, divorced, an actress, and Black, and she, in their eyes, had so many things that they were already fighting against. But you're totally right. Then her family on top of it was probably pretty difficult, but I think it was hard to not see them support Harry as well because, like, we know how the line to the throne works. Like, now Will's kids are in front of Harry. So I don't know why there was this, like, equal pressure for them to be like Will and Kate and be scandal-free and stuff when they're not, like, directly, I guess they are directly in line to the throne, but, like, they're not, like, 2 and 3 anymore or whatever. They're like 6th or 7th now.
I think it's because Harry was always a little bit more scandalous, by the way. I don't know if you remember, like in Las Vegas, when that whole nudes, I was like 12. I was shook. I was like, what is happening? But I think
Me too. And the Nazi costume.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting, but
No
that
worries.
was really bad.
Exactly. And I think it's because he just knew he never had that pressure of like being king because he probably would never be. He knew growing up that kids always go first. So it would have been William, then all of his kids, and then Harry. And I think despite that, the royal family, they're traditional. And again, I'm not trying to say there's a right way of living or there's the wrong way of living, but I think in our generation, when we look at Meghan, we see someone like mindsets have shifted. When we look at someone who's been divorced, we don't think like that's taboo or that's gross or you're not a good wife. We think like, wow, like you were able to overcome such an emotional roller coaster in your life. The royal family probably sees that as a negative. I think seeing someone who, for example, doesn't have a good relationship with their dad and still building such a successful career, we think of that as a boss babe, whereas in blunt terms, people would say you have daddy issues. And I think it's just a perspective. And it's so interesting because it's this exact same thing as Diana. Everyone looks at Meghan, and I guess in North America at least, people are a fan of her, whether it's her acting, it's her charity work, it's the way she speaks, her style. Most people have something good to say about her. Whereas I think internally, she's seen as a burden. And when Harry said, when they made a statement about how they're leaving, and Harry was like, "Oh, like I just don't want the paparazzi to do to Meghan what they did to my mom." I think that speaks volume to that, because the British tabloids were ripping her apart in ways that they never ripped apart Kate. Granted, when you walk into that position, I do think, you got a lot of eyes on you. So people are going to comment on what you say and what you wear. You have to sit a little bit straighter. You have to eat a little slower. But I think you could visibly see a difference in what the tabloids had to say about Meghan and what they had to say about Kate, 10 years prior to the same timeline. So I think that's honestly the best summary of like how everything I think goes down in like the royal family and the mindset.
So do you think Harry does think it is the paparazzi that was like chasing Princess Di? Because he did say that when they first left.
Yeah, he did. And the paparazzi did have a massive impact, not only on Diana's like depression, her bulimia, her happiness. Like imagine someone with a camera is in your face all the time. You would want to lose your mind, but you can't lose your mind because they're going to take a picture of you losing your mind and put it on the front cover of the magazine tomorrow. And even when she was in a car accident, people were taking pictures of it. It's literally like the best analogy is if Kylie Jenner fell in front of you and you took a picture of it before you helped her up. That's like the
Yeah,
2020 analogy. Not to say that I think
totally.
Kylie Jenner is on Princess Diana level, just to make that clarification. But
Yes.
I think he does, and I think this might be a follow up to your question. Was that like do Harry and William think the royal family did it? Do they think it was paparazzi? I think they think it was the paparazzi and just not getting care on time, because at the end of the day, that's their dad, that's their grandma. You know what I mean? Like we're sitting here and we're talking about Prince Charles like it's just a fictional character, but that's their father. So I think you need a
Yeah.
lot more concrete evidence to genuinely believe that someone who raised you and you know you look at every day is behind such a horrifying event of your life.
Do you think that they ever like looked into it?
I don't know. They've never spoken about it, so I'm honestly not sure.
It's like, yeah, a question that has always kind of lingered for me.
100%.
I think another thing with Harry, though, is like when they left the royal family, it still seemed like 99% of the blame was on Meghan. And I just don't get that because, from me, a complete outsider who follows the royal family, like anecdotally, like not super, super in depth, it seemed like he wanted to leave the royal family for years. So why, again, is all this blame being put on Meghan?
So you're 100% right, because he had even spoken about it in like a couple years before his marriage and his engagement, like saying like I've considered, after I think it was military school, he was like I've considered leaving the royal family. But I think the reason people like to blame Meghan is because it's honestly just a form of scapegoating. You look at this person and you're like, people think, oh, Harry was such a young and handsome gentleman, and then he married someone and boom, he left. Like it's a correlation doesn't mean causation mindset that I think a lot of people have. They like to think, okay, there was this additional variable, which was his marriage, and now he's kind of like gone off the rails and doesn't want to be a royal anymore. Doesn't want He left his parents, he left his grandmother, he left his brother. Like people, I don't know if you've even seen this, blame, because Harry and William had a super close brotherhood, and Harry was super close with Kate, and like people make comments about how like Meghan ruined their brother relationship. And I hate to break it to you, he's a grown man. He makes his own decisions. Like, I promise you,
Totally.
I don't think he's the one. I don't think he's being forced to do anything. If anything, I think Meghan was a positive source that pushed him towards making a decision that maybe he was afraid to make on his own beforehand.
Totally. Where do you think Harry and Will stand nowadays?
I would love to know. I think they seemed like they were really good brothers, so I hope that they're I guess, still on good terms and they still have a lot of love for each other because I think they were really cute. Like when you would see pictures of them together, especially going through such a rough childhood, I think that even brings you closer. But I think they're just living different lives right now. Like they're on opposite sides of the world. They're preparing for different things. Like it's almost like a band breaking up. You know what I mean? Like it's like you still care for each other, but it's like I'm doing my thing, you're doing my thing. You're doing your thing, but I don't think they've talked about it at all. And I think
No.
there's rumors that they might go back to the UK
Yeah.
for the 100th birthday of Prince Philip. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for that, but
Yeah, I like can't
not
wait for
sure.
pictures of them all together. Like
I
I know
know.
that and like it's just so funny because it's just like pictures of people, but I loved always seeing their pictures in like even just like walking into the churches on like Christmas and stuff, like with their hats and their gloves and just like impeccable clothing.
Oh, me too,
Ugh,
because they have such good style and they look so good.
I know. I love it. And it's so different from things that we would like wear here most of the time. So, yeah, I love it. And I can't wait for that. But yeah, you're totally right. Like I think that's something that people just aren't thinking about is like when you get older and you have a partner and a child and you live in different places, like you still have a good relationship with other people, but you might just not spend as much time with them, or it just might be a different iteration. Like this is a really weird connection, but I'm currently rewatching The Hills.
I've
Did you
never
ever
seen
watch The
that.
Hills?
No.
Oh my okay, this is like these are the differences between a
The
28-year-old and a
the
21-year-old.
generational gap.
Yes, but cuz it was like our I don't even know what an equivalent would be
Is it like
nowadays,
a
but it
Gossip
was
Girl OC vibe? That's what I'm getting from when I'm looking at it right now.
it basically is like a real version of the OC. Like it
Okay.
is like yeah, the original reality TV show.
Oh, it's reality TV.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It is like non-scripted. Yes, but basically there's a main character, her name is Lauren Conrad, and her best friend Heidi Montag, and they live together in an apartment. And Heidi gets a boyfriend and starts spending all of her time with him. And Lauren just cannot get over it. And I don't think that once you get a partner, you should stop hanging out with your friends. Like, not at all. But I, it's so hard to watch Lauren because she's just saying, like, we used to hang out every single night and now you're never here. And we used to have Lauren and Heidi time all the time. And I'm like, well, people grow up and their spouse or their partner becomes their main person, their best friend, and your relationship might change, and that's sad sometimes, but it can just be just as fulfilling. And I kind of think that's what's happened here. Like that Harry was always like the single guy tagging along with Kate and Will, and now he has his own priorities, and it's just annoying that they always pin everything on Meghan.
100%. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you're like, he has his own priorities now. He's not William's plus one. He's not their like third wheel. And when he was younger, I think that was almost cute, like your older brother and like you're kind of following along, you're doing stuff, but it's like now he's older. And when you have your own wife and kids and someone says your family, the first picture that comes to your head is your wife and kids. It's obviously your brother, your dad is still your family, but they're almost like a secondary priority to that. So,
Totally.
and I think people liked Harry. People didn't want him to leave or didn't want him to walk away or move. And it's easy to blame someone. And Meghan, who already gets, I think, so much hate, is just an easy person to target.
Do you think this is a question that we got from a listener that I always wonder myself is like, do you think that relationships, so like brotherly relationships or like siblings or romantic relationships, do you ever think they can be super authentic or thrive or be successful with people that are in line for the throne? Because I just think like they seem to have a really good relationship, but it seems hard when, yeah, like one person gets treated differently than the other.
Yes. Okay. It's funny that you mentioned this because I think I was having a very similar conversation about something like this yesterday. I think the biggest source of sibling rivalry is parents putting a difference on the kids. And I don't know how, obviously, William or Harry were raised, but I think if one was treated constantly like you're the future king, you're everything we need, and one person was kind of pushed to the side, I think that would create some internal conflict. But I think, they went to the same schools, they got the same things, they got the same experiences. And I think growing up, maybe you don't even register like what it means to be king. And the fact that Queen Elizabeth is probably going to be here forever and they're not even going to get the chance of reaching the throne. I think it's something that you don't actively think about until you're older. And I think just they got lucky because naturally Harry's personality and the way he talks about it seems like he never even wanted that to begin with. So I think it was like they were treated very similar. William was ready to take that responsibility. Harry didn't care for it. So I think they were just able to stay good friends. But even in like everyday life, you've seen like relationships or sisters and brothers that don't get along. I think it stems from the parents like favoring one kid and pampering them to the max and not putting enough love and attention to the other ones. And I don't have siblings, so maybe this is an only child perspective that isn't even correct. I'm speaking about this too much, but I think that's a common source most of the time.
Yeah, that's actually really wise. I think that's a really good point. But I feel like also, even if they tried to raise them equally, there's just these constant reminders that they are the heir. Like, even I just saw a picture, like it was probably a few years ago now, but it was Prince Charles, Queen Elizabeth, Will, and George. And I was just thinking, like, it would even be weird, say you're all hanging out and or all getting your portraits or pictures taken. And then it's like, okay, let's get like the heirs, and like you plebs just like stand over there. Like it just, I don't know. I just feel like there would be constant reminders, even if they were the best parents trying to make it all equal.
No, I think you're 100% right. And it's something that is so weird because it's the lottery of birth. William didn't choose or
Yeah.
win being born first. He just happened to get that. So I don't know how much Harry really cares for it, but I think that if you do care, there's definitely jealousy there. And I don't know how much this is true, but do you remember how maybe a couple of years ago there was like a lot of rumors about how like Charles is really pissed that like his mom is around and he won't be king. Like that is like I just don't know if I could ever imagine myself being like, Mom, I really need you to like leave and die
Die.
because and I guess maybe I've never been in that position, so I don't want to speak on it. But I think sometimes you are power hungry for that, or it's something that has been talked about for your whole life, and you're like, okay, well, I'm 70, I'm 60, and when am I going to see the throne? So, right, I do think it's very difficult.
Yeah. I think that too, because yeah, we could never think of that, but we've never grown up because he's like in his mid 70s, I think. Like,
I think
we've
so.
never had this constant preparation and responsibility, and then it just like never come to fruition because people like 75 is like getting on in age. This is such a morbid part of the
He's
podcast.
72.
I feel like, yeah, but like 72, like this is gross, but like a lot of people don't live past their like mid 70s. So
Queen Elizabeth does.
yeah, I guess they must have excellent genes, but yeah, it is such a weird situation that I could never think of. But I even think of like famous people like the Kardashians and stuff that have like no problems like cutting best friends and blah blah blah, and like or being power hungry against siblings and stuff. And it's just such a different life than you and I live as
Oh,
mere peasants.
no, 100%. Yeah, I almost feel like I can't even empathize with it because I'm like, I don't even know how to put myself in your shoes. But
Totally.
it could be a potential thing. And even between like Harry and William have so many cousins. But it's like I was talking about this with my friend, and I was like, Eugenie got married months after Harry and Meghan. I could not tell you a single thing about that wedding. I couldn't tell you who came. I couldn't tell you
Yeah,
where it was. I couldn't tell you what she wore. And almost, I feel like that might be a blessing in disguise because she gets everything they get. She gets the same castles, she gets the same palaces, she gets the same food, she gets the same service. But people almost like don't care. And I think she can live her life. Whereas I feel like
totally.
it's obviously William and Kate, you know, have all the attention. They're in line to be the future king and queen, but they sneeze at the wrong event and everyone talks about it. And I think it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense where, you know, you're in line, everyone favors you, but all the attention is on you, good or bad.
Totally. That's such a good point. Yeah, and I just want to put on the record that I actually, her wedding dress and her flowers, Eugenie's, are my favorite of all of the recent royal weddings.
Um, what are they? Like what type of flower were they?
I think they were just like blush pink roses, like dusty pink
She looked really
roses.
pretty.
She looked so good because I do not like what she wears on like a normal basis, but it
Really.
was actually a Queen Elizabeth dress that was altered for her. And I don't think, and then obviously the jewels and stuff, and I don't think it would be like, I think if I had to pick a dress for myself, I would pick Meghan's dress as my favorite, like in IRL, but I think hers as like kind of like a princess or like a royal family member, like she truly looked like a
Like a
princess.
princess.
So I
No,
wouldn't
you're
wear
right.
that to my own wedding because I'm not a princess, but like it just looked so perfect and like like such a fairy tale. So
Yeah, she looks stunning. I'm looking at her right now.
yeah, it is. I think it's my favorite. I think she, yeah, really killed it there.
I also loved Megan's dress that she wore to their after party. Like I don't even remember what it looked like. It was like off the shoulder, I think. It was just very all I remember was like she looked stunning, he looked handsome, and there was like a vintage car, and that's I was like, I want that.
Yes. I know. It was like, I think it was like a halter dress, and she wore that huge
Yes.
aquamarine Princess Di diamond.
Yes, yes.
It was,
Stunning.
I love that. I love following Instagram accounts of like Meghan and Kate's closets.
Even
Like,
though like I
they're
literally have to sell a kidney to buy one of them.
yeah. Yes, because I just love and I love when they do like deep dives on the jewelry that they wear and where they're from and their history and stuff, and that they're on loan from the queen, and like just all of these things that are like so fascinating.
Me too. I like this stuff too.
Okay, I have two more questions. They're kind of, I feel like I'm part of like the tabloids, like This Is Us Weekly or something. But do you think that there's any like truth to the rumors that Will cheated on Kate?
I don't know because I think there's not enough evidence in that sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think when you want to hear a story, need to hear, like, from start to finish, tell me what happened next. But I will say they're still together for whatever reason. You know, like, I'm not saying they're happily married, they're still married. So I feel like I have zero idea. And granted, I don't know if maybe she would I don't know if she would get a divorce if they were true. I know it was her best friend too, so there was definitely some internal tension on that side. I hope they're not true because I think a lot of people judged him a lot when those rumors came out. To be completely honest, there were rumors saying like you're just like your dad, like I thought you were the good one. It seems very like it just seems like gossip, but gossip can also be
Yeah.
true. I don't think the woman has spoke out about it. I could be wrong. Like I don't think it was the specific person said like he cheated on me. I think it was someone said that he's been cheating on Kate with her best friend. I don't know if it was someone trying to tell a story. Like I'm in a very like lost position on this. Like, do you have an opinion? Because I would love to know yours.
Yeah, I don't think I want to believe that again he didn't do that because I love them together and I feel like he's one of the good guys, but yeah, I do feel like there was a time in their marriage where there might have been a little bit of like trouble in paradise. Like there was that infamous like video where he like tried to put his hand on her like shoulder or something and she like kind of brushed it off. And yeah, I think that like in any relationship there's some ebbs and flows, but yeah,
For
I don't want
sure.
to believe that he would do that to Kate.
I know. I agree. And I think that and I talked about this a little bit on my TikTok too. I think like people come at the woman who gets cheated on and stays more than they come at the man. So I think obviously William
Yeah.
got a lot of hate, but I think Kate got a lot of hate too from quote unquote feminists saying, how can you stay with him? How can you do this? And it's like, I support that she made the decision she thinks is best for her and her kids. And let's just leave it at that, everyone. So it's hard.
It's so tough. Yeah, to kind of decipher what is real and to live in a world where people are writing those rumors about you. I feel like that's
Exactly.
really difficult. And I think the last question that I have for you, which is like in true ready to be petty fashion, why do you think that William has never gotten hair implants?
I saw this and I literally chuckled a little. So poor guy gets a lot of hate about his hair.
I know.
He was very attractive. I think it probably doesn't bother him. Like I think, you know what I mean? Like I think if he woke up and he was like, I look ugly or I need hair, he has the resources, he has the money, like he's
Yeah.
not lacking that. I think it's not a priority for him. Like I think he wakes up and he's like, I have a wife, I have kids, and I need to get stuff done. So I think that's one reason. And honestly, like I don't know if this is just me. I think something if people made videos or posts, granted, I don't think William scrolls on TikTok and sees these posts about his bald hair, but I think like a lot of celebrities, like when they get hate or when they get comments about a specific thing, they almost don't change it because they want to show that they don't care and they're confident and they're powerful. Like if you want to be king one day, I think you need to be very self assured and know what you want and not let little things get to you. So I think he's just like, I don't mind it. If you mind it, go ahead. Same thing. Like this is a side tangent, but Winnie Harlow and her, making her skin kind of like her trademark. Not to say that I think William is going to make his bald head his trademark. I think a lot of people probably told her like, oh, if you get your skin fixed or if you go get a spray tan, you'll be such a better model. And if she was to do that, she might not have been as successful as she is today. I think when people kind of point at your insecurities, you almost don't want to say like, you're right, I do look bad, let me go change right now. You almost want to say, okay, well, I don't care, have fun.
Totally. I think that, yeah, that is a really good point that you're right. We should rise above traditional beauty
Yeah.
standards. And
Yeah.
if you're going bald, like just embrace it. But I will say, it is just, it seems like such a loss because he was literally so fucking hot. And
Fire. I didn't know this though. I kind of feel bad because baldness, I think, is a common insecurity amongst guys.
I know, and I feel bad even bringing it up now that we're chatting about this, but I also just want to say, like, normalize getting hair implants.
Yeah.
I think that it's becoming a little bit more normalized. I see it pop up on my YouTube a lot, like, just like
I see it too.
like guys just like, here's my experience and my journey through getting like hair implants, but it's also just like, and maybe it's specific for guys because like, yeah, they're not supposed to care about what they look like as much as women do, etc., which is just BS. But like, I just think that if it is insecurity, just like go for it. And also it's like something that I just feel like if you did want to change it for yourself or whatever, you could do that. And I think that people should be like accepting of that, because I feel like it'd be like, oh, well, what are the tabloids gonna say about my new hair? But I don't know, maybe it's too late now. Like maybe when it was thinning he could have done something gradual, but I don't know, I'm of two minds always with like cosmetic things. I'm like, yeah, rise above those like unrealistic beauty standards, but then I'm also just like, also if you want to get something that feels like it'll help, just like do it.
I agree. I think you said it perfectly. People underestimate how insecure men can get, or people like to say things on the internet thinking that these aren't real people. Again, I don't think William sees the TikToks about his bald head, but I think, like some of the stuff that people say is rude and it's hurtful. And I think that at the end of the day, everyone's human. So if, Kate Middleton gets insecure the same way our moms do, or our grandparents do, or whoever, people feel insecure in their bodies. So I think you should be able to do whatever you want. And I think you said it perfectly. And honestly, I think the tabloids say something regardless of what you do. Just do what makes you happy. Like, he could get hair implants, and I feel like people are going to write about it. He could not get hair implants, and people are still going to write about it. So I think you honestly just summed it up.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and, bringing all of your perspective and your research to Princess Di and then Will, Kate, Harry, and Meghan.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a fun chat. I love this.
Outside of all of the death stuff, it truly was really fun.
Yeah, we got a little morbid over here, but no, I really enjoyed talking about it. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. Where can the listeners find you on TikTok so they can also go through your like multi-episode arc?
Yeah, so you can find me on TikTok. It's just Ida Salamat, AIDASALAMAT. My last name's just A after A, but yeah, that's where you can find me on TikTok. Thanks so much again for having me. This is so fun. I can't believe TikTok brought us together. I think that's like the most 2020 thing that could happen. But thanks so much.
No worries. And if you want to come on and chat about anything else, just let me know. And there you have it. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Ida for sharing all of your research and your opinions on the royal family. If you really enjoyed today's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review, and follow along with our shenanigans on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RTBP Podcast. What do you want to hear about next? Let me know. Send me a DM, and I'd be happy to discuss. I hope that you are safe and well out there. As always, I'm your host, Tori, and I'm ready to be petty. See you soon. Bye.